Dear learners, myself, Professor Vaibhav Gulabrao Bhamre, will hereby discuss about solubility of drug. During this presentation, my focus will be on the introduction of the concept of solubility, definition of solubility, what is meant by solution, what are the types of solution, in order to prepare that solution, how you are going to express solubility, the biopharmaceutical classification system of drug, and how solute and solvent interacts with one another. Starting with introduction, the first thing that we need to understand is what solubility is the important parameter to achieve desired concentration of drug in systemic circulation. Whenever we are consuming drug, that drug goes into stomach. For example, we are consuming by oral route. I am taking tablet. Once I am taking that tablet will go into stomach. In that stomach, it will undergo disintegration and dissolution, and whatever drug in that tablet that goes into my GI fluid, wherein body or blood absorbs that concentration of drug, and when that drug reaches to systemic circulation, that reaches to my blood, then and then only that drug shows expected physiological response, and the concentration by which drug reaches to systemic circulation in its unchanged form is called as bioavailability. But so as to have that bioavailability, first of all, it is important that that drug must get dissolved. And so as to have that dissolution, the important thing is solubility. That's why we can say that solubility is directly having impact on bioavailability. Any drug to be absorbed in systemic circulation must be present in form of an aqueous solution, and that aqueous solution at the site of absorption from where that drug gets absorbed. And we are generally saying that water is the solvent, water is the preferable choice as a solvent for number of pharmaceutical formulation. So if any drug shows poor solubility in that water, then obviously it will have impact on absorption, which is leading to inadequate bioavailability. So if bioavailability is less, then that particular drug will not show its expected physiological response. So when we are referring to the solubility, when we are trying to have that drug dissolved into your solvent and so as to have that bioavailability, one need to understand that the solubility of compound depends on the physical and chemical properties of the components. So what are the components? There are two basic components. The first one is solute and second one is the solvent. Suppose I want to prepare a liquid form of sugar. So what I need to do? I need to take some sugar and I will dissolve that sugar into cup of water. So these are the two components to prepare a solution of sugar. The first one is sugar itself and the second one is water, which is responsible to acquire that sugar. So the two components are solute, that is your sugar, and solvent, that is your water. So the solubility of any compound depends on that solute and solvent. So first of all, it is important to understand what is meant by solute and what is meant by solvent. Solute is any substance which can be either solid or liquid or gas dissolved in a solvent. Means solute can exist in any state of matter, either solid state, liquid state or gaseous state of matter, but that concentration, that amount is to be dissolved into solvent. The one which gets dissolved into second is called as solute. Generally, when you are preparing solution, the amount of solute is always less than solvent. Now the second thing is solvent. A solvent is a substance that is responsible to dissolve a solute. Means it must have capability to acquire that component which is expecting to get dissolved. Means in sugar solution, if sugar is water and convert that sugar into its liquid form without application of temperature, then you will require something that will convert your solid sugar into liquid sugar, and for the sake of that you will require solvent. The solvent is the component of a solution that is present in higher concentration. If we need to quote some examples, then we can say that the best example for solute is your sodium chloride, that is your salt, and sugar, the solvent which represents as your water and ethanol. Now, the second thing is how you can actually define solubility. So, there are two ways by which you can define solubility. The first way is quantitative way, that is completely depending on quantity of your solute and solvent, and second one is your qualitative way. So the qualitative way gives you the parameter of solute and solvent. If we are focusing on quantitative definition of solubility, then you can say that quantitatively solubility is defined as maximum amount of substance that will dissolve in given amount of solvent at a specified temperature. So the amount of substance that will dissolve means what? Solute. And the second one which will allow that solute to dissolve, that is your solvent. The second definition is qualitative definition of solubility, which can be defined as a spontaneous interaction between solute and solvent to form homogeneous solution. So there must be interaction between solute and solvent so as to form a solution. Let me quote a example over here to elaborate the concept of qualitative solubility. Suppose I am having two solutions. Okay, the first one where the components are sugar and water. Okay, and the second one is the mixture of your paper and water. So in the first case sugar is your solute, and in the second case anything that is your rubber balls, for example we can say that thermocol balls. So in the second case thermocol ball is there which is your solute. In both the cases water is your solvent. Now in the first case that sugar undergoes dissolution into solvent, means there is a kind of interaction between your sugar and water, that is nothing but interaction between your solute and solvent which will give you solution. But in the second case now you are having balls of thermocol and you are having water. So when you are trying to dissolve that thermocol balls into water, what will happen? That will not get dissolved. That thermocol ball will float over the water. So in the second example there is no interaction between solute and solvent. So this is the point which expresses the qualitative solubility. You must have the interaction between solute and solvent. So these are the two ways. One is your quantitative approach and second one is your qualitative approach by which you can define solubility. So in both the cases you are using a particular amount of solute and you are trying to dissolve it into solvent. So based on that solubility is usually expressed as gram per liter, means the amount of solute that is to be dissolved into amount of solvent. When you are mixing these two components, one is your solute and second one is your solvent, so the homogeneous mixture will give you solution. Let me highlight two different concepts. One is homogeneous mixture and second one is heterogeneous mixture. Again go back to the two examples. The first one having sugar and water, the second one having thermocol balls and water. In the first case, when that sugar dissolves into water, then you are having a homogeneous mixture. Means from that mixture you cannot separate that sugar and water. Means once when you are having that final solution out of which you cannot differentiate its component, then you are referring them as a homogeneous mixture. But in the second case, where I was quoting example of thermocol balls and water, at that point from that solution you can easily separate that thermocol balls, so that will become heterogeneous mixture. So solutions that belongs to the category of homogeneous mixture. So here in diagram I am having a blue colored solute. So suppose I am having 1 gram of solute and I am pouring that 1 gram of solute into water. Now what will happen? As I am pouring this solute into water, that will lead to breakdown of this solute, and this breakdown of solute will facilitate dissolution into solvent. So once this dissolution has been facilitated, it will give me a final liquid that is nothing but solution. So that is what homogeneous mixture. There are various types of solutions. The two basic ways by which you can classify your solution is the first one depending on dissolution of solute in the solvent, and second one is depending upon physical state of solute and solvent. Let's see one by one. In the first case, when we are trying to categorize solutions on the basis of dissolution, then they are basically categorized into saturated solution, unsaturated solution, and supersaturated solution. The three basic classes depending on dissolution are saturated solution, unsaturated solution, and supersaturated solution. Let's see one by one. In case of saturated solution, I will quote with example that suppose I am having 10 gram of sugar and 1 liter of water. So what I am doing is I am taking that 1 gram of sugar and I am pouring that into 1 liter of water. So that sugar will easily get dissolved into water, giving me a solution, that is your homogeneous mixture. Now to the same mixture again I am adding 1 gram of sugar. Now what will happen? In that 1 liter of solution you will have 2 gram of sugar. Now to the same mixture again I am pouring 1 gram of sugar. So what will happen? Out of this third gram of sugar, some amount will get dissolved into that 1 liter of solvent and some amount will remain undissolved. So in that solution now I am having dissolved substance and same way I am having undissolved substance. When these dissolved and undissolved substances are in equilibrium, then you are saying that the solution is saturated. And when it happens? It happens when your solvent is not capable of dissolving your solute. So when the capability of solvent limits to particular concentration, not allowing your solute to get dissolved, then you are saying that the solution is saturated solution. The second is unsaturated solution, which says that the concentration of solute is comparatively less than your saturated solution. In this type of solution, a solvent is capable of dissolving any more solute at a given temperature. Means when I am pouring that 1 gram of sugar into 1 liter of water, then the formed solution is unsaturated solution. The next is your supersaturated solution. Now, in contrast to saturated solution, unsaturated solution contains less amount of solute, right? But in case of supersaturated solution, the concentration of solute is much more than saturated solution. Means if you need to distinguish between these three, then you can say that I am having 10 gram of sugar and 1 liter of water. I am pouring that 1 gram of sugar into water, then that will easily get dissolved. That will give me unsaturated solution. Now in the second step, what I am doing, to the same 1 liter solution I am adding 1 gram of sugar. Now out of that 1 gram, 0.5 gram will get dissolved and 0.5 gram will remain in undissolved condition. Means there is equilibrium between dissolved and undissolved. So it will give me saturated solution. Means what? The concentration of solute is less into unsaturated solution comparison to saturated solution. Now again I am adding to the same one, the one which is having 0.5 gram of undissolved solute, I am adding 1 gram of solute. So what will happen? The amount of undissolved solute will become 1.5 gram. The initial 0.5 and this one 1 gram. So it will give me supersaturated solution. So these are the three classes based on dissolution of the solute in the solvent. Now the next class is depending on physical state of solute and solvent, which I have explained earlier that homogeneous solution and heterogeneous solution. Let's see it again. In case of homogeneous solution, you are having uniform composition and properties throughout the solution. As I stated earlier, I am having sugar and water. So once you are preparing that solution, from that solution you can't separate that sugar from your water, so it will give you homogeneous solution. But in case of heterogeneous solution, these are the solutions with non-uniform composition and properties throughout the solution. For example, I am having rubber balls, I am having thermocol balls, and I am pouring that thermocol ball into water. So the final solution, from that final solution, I can easily remove thermocol balls, so that will become heterogeneous solution. As stated earlier, solubility is expressed in quantitative form and in qualitative form. But when it comes about classification, the way by which you are expressing that solubility, then United States of Pharmacopoeia USP gives solubility as part of solvents required to dissolve one part of solute. Means I am having one part of solute, and how much amount of solvent is required to dissolve that one part of solute will be the basis for the expression of solubility. Here solubility is expressed in various terminologies as very soluble, freely soluble, soluble, sparingly soluble, slightly soluble, very slightly soluble, and practically insoluble. So I am going to express this solubility on the basis of part of solvent required to dissolve one part of solute. So if the amount of solute required to dissolve solute, amount of solvent required to dissolve amount of solute is less than 1, then you are saying that the solubility or the component is very soluble. Similarly, as the part of solvent required to dissolve one part of solvent goes on increasing, the solubility goes on decreasing. Means when you are having one part of solute, and to dissolve that one part of solute, if you are required less than one part of solvent, then you are saying that it is very soluble. But at the same time, instead of that one part of solvent, you are requiring more than 10,000 parts of solvent, then you are saying that that is practically insoluble. So this is the qualitative approach. And in the way to dissolve or to express that solubility quantitatively, there are various terms that you are using. The terminologies are like molarity, normality, molality, mole fraction, etc. etc. So, by these terminologies, you can easily express solubility. We have seen these terminologies in your first year, that's why I will not go that much deep in the explanation of these terminologies as molarity, normality, molality, mole fraction, etc. Out of these terminologies, the one I find different comparative to your syllabus from first year, and that is mole fraction. I will elaborate that only. The mole fraction is given by symbol x, as this mole fraction terminology is used in further part of your syllabus. So the mole fraction is the ratio of mole of one constituent of a solution to the total mole of all constituents. Now suppose you are having n moles of solute and you are having y moles of solvent. So the mole fraction is nothing but ratio of x divided by x plus y, that will give you mole fraction. Now the next part is biopharmaceutical classification system, that is also known as BCS classification. Now considering the drug absorption, United States Food and Drug Administration, that is US FDA, World Health Organization, that is WHO, and European Medicines Evaluation Agency, that is EMEA, has given guidelines that restricts substance using solubility and permeability. So these are the two basics upon which biopharmaceutical classification system is relied. The two concepts are solubility and permeability. This BCS classification system recommends method for classification according to dosage form, dissolution, along with the solubility permeability characteristic of the drug. There are four classes based on the permeability and solubility. The first one is high permeability, high solubility. Second one is high permeability, low solubility. Third one, low permeability, high solubility. And the last class, that is fourth class, low permeability, low solubility. So the drugs those are having high permeability ratio are kept into the class 1 and 2, and those are having low permeability comparative to high permeability, they are kept into class 3 and 4. Let's see one by one. The first one, high permeability and high solubility drugs. The drugs of this class exhibits high absorption number and high dissolution number. Means they can easily get solubilized and they can easily get absorbed. Means they are highly permeable. The rate limiting step in this class of drug is drug dissolution, and if dissolution is very rapid, then the gastric emptying rate, means the speed by which that drug gets removed from your gastric fluid, that is your gastric emptying rate, becomes the rate determining step. The second one is high permeability, low solubility drugs. The drugs of this class have high absorption number, but they are having low dissolution number. Means they are capable to get absorbed, but they are not that much capable to get dissolved. So the drugs are categorized into class 2 with high permeability, low solubility drugs. In vivo drug dissolution in this class is the rate limiting step. In the first one, that was your the rate limiting step was dissolution. Here the limiting step is in vivo drug dissolution. So in vivo drug dissolution is then a rate limiting step for absorption except at a very high dose number. The next class is low permeability, high solubility drugs. The permeability of drug is rate limiting step here. but the drug is solvated very quickly. Means the drug is capable of dissolution, but that is not getting absorbed. That's why the class for the such kind of drugs having low permeability but high solubility belongs to low permeability high solubility drugs. The fourth class is low permeability, low solubility drugs. These compounds have poor bioavailability comparative to class 1, class 2 and class 3 because they are not that much absorbed through the intestinal mucosa, and they are having a variability, much more variability expected, much more variability than the expected one. Now, the next part is the mechanism by which the solute and solvents undergoes interaction. Here, solubility occurs under dynamic equilibrium. So, there are some kind of processes that took place, which means the processes have impact on the process of interaction between solute and solvent. So, the two processes, dissolution and phase joining, you can say precipitation here. So these are the two opposing processes that are leading to solute solvent interaction. The specific solute solvent interaction has solubility as a characteristic property. You might have heard about like dissolves like, means the two components which are alike in nature dissolves one another. So we are saying that like dissolves like. To understand the forces that enables a solute to dissolve in a solvent. For example, the general polar solvent dissolves polar solute. If you are having polar solute, then that gets easily dissolved into polar solvent. The intermolecular interaction between the solute and solvent molecule determines the mutual solubility. How both of them gets interacted with one another. For example, I am having two components, component A and component B. A is your solute and B is your solvent. Now suppose the table distinguishes that when the interaction between solute A and solvent B, the nature is given here either non-polar or polar. So if your solute is non-polar and your solvent is again non-polar, then the interaction between A, B or AB gives you solubility. So from this table you can easily identify that how the intermolecular attraction between the solvent and the solute molecule leads to solubility. Now, to understand, you can observe that various forces are responsible for the solute solvent interaction. So, on the basis of the types of forces, the solvents are categorized as protic solvents, or you can say them as a polar solvent, dipolar or aprotic solvents, and you can say the third one as aprotic solvent. Let's see one by one. The protic solvents or polar solvents contains proton-donor groups and they are designated as protein solvents. They have hydrogen bond donor and they have hydrogen bond acceptor solvents. So the solvent containing donor groups are hydrogen bond donors and the one containing proton acceptor groups are called as hydrogen bond acceptor solvents. The relative permeability of this type of solvent is larger. Protic solvents, for example, your water, these are having high dipole moments which enables them to dissolve polar solute, means like dissolves like. So the polar solutes gets dissolved into polar solvents. So the second type of solvent is dipolar aprotic solvents. These dipolar aprotic solvents have polar groups. So their relative permittivity is moderately large, means they are having relative permittivity more than 15. But the lone pair of electrons present on that dipolar aprotic solvent can act as hydrogen bond acceptors, and in any hydrogen bond formation between solvent and solute, they can take part for the complex formation, or they can take part by means of charge transfer. The next type of solvent is aprotic solvent. These apolar aprotic solvents have low dipole moments and dielectric constants. Hence, they cannot dissolve polar or ionic solutes. These solvents are capable of dissolving apolar aprotic compounds by keeping them in solution, and the forces which are responsible for that are van der Waals London forces. There are three steps by which the actual mechanism by which solvent and solute gets interacted. There are three steps or three basic mechanisms. The first one is by breaking the bond within the solute. The second step is the breaking intermolecular attractive forces within the solvent. The first one and the second one are the endothermic processes. For both breakdown of bond and breakdown of intermolecular attractive forces, you will require energy. So both the processes, both the steps are endothermic process, whereas the third one, which requires formation of new attractive solute solvent bond, and it won't requires energy. The energy is given out during this attractive bond formation. So the third step is exothermic. The first and second steps are endothermic, where bond breaking and breaking of intermolecular attractive forces takes place, and the third one is bond formation. Here I am giving you a diagrammatic representation by which you can easily explain step 1, step 2 and step 3. Let's see here. The first one, step 1, where you are having this solute. So the first step, in the first step, what happens? The bond breaking takes place and the solute will convert into expanded solute. So this is your first step. In this second step, what happens? As like your solute, you are having breakdown of intermolecular attractive forces within the solvent. This is the first one, which is limited with solute, and the second step that is associated with your solvent. So in the first step, you are having breaking of bond within the solute, and in the second case you are having breaking of bond within the solvent, and in the third step the expanded solute, that is bond break solute and expanded solvent, these two undergoes formation of new attractive bond. So that will give you solute solvent bond formation. So this was about various concepts about solubility, which basically focuses on expression mechanism of solubility of drugs. Thank you.